And now, please welcome to the stage with PwC, Matt Wilden and Allison Wyckoff.
Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for coming and joining us here in the middle of the day. I know there's a lot of places you could be. Thanks for coming here. With you today, you can go ahead, go forward. My name is Matt Wilden. I'm a partner in PwC's cyber practice. I run the Google Cybersecurity Alliance and practice for the firm. And so deal a lot with Google and Mandiant and what we help our customers with on a day-to-day basis. With me is Allison Wyckoff. I'll let her sort of give an intro for herself here.
Thanks. Yeah. So I'm Allison Wyckoff, and I run our global threat intelligence practice here at PwC from an America's perspective.
Yeah. So today, we're here to do a very brief discussion on threat intelligence, security operations, how we tie those together for our clients. Obviously, a Google Mandiant theme here at MY is around SecOps and the tooling they bring to bear. And I think just as an aside, I'm glad that we're going with Allison first because we have our booth over in the front, and a large majority of questions that we've gotten over the morning has been, PwC, you guys do security? We've been in this game for decades and people still think of us as an accounting firm, a tax firm. Yes, we do security. Yes, we do incident response. Yes, we do threat intelligence. And maybe that's a good segue to you, Allison, to give a brief overview of who we are, what we do, and what you're seeing.
Yeah, thank you. And I have enjoyed those conversations at the booth as well. So I'm always happy to talk about the kind of work that my team is doing. But yeah, we wanted to kick off and talk a little bit about the threat landscape. But first, a little bit about how we do it. So the threat intelligence team at PwC is about 30 people across 10 different countries. We are hardcore TI consultants. So I know people think of PwC as pure play consulting, but we do a lot of research on the threat landscape. And we track about 400 different threat actors across 27 different countries. In terms of how we talk about the threat, we do that in terms of motivation. So we've got espionage-based threat actors who a lot of folks might traditionally refer to as APT or nation-state threat actors. Then we have the criminally and financially motivated threat actors. So that's predominantly our ransomware space. We still see hacktivism. A lot of that has kind of resurged with general conflict around the world. And then we have sabotage actors as well. So we actually do issue an annual report every year. If people are interested in that, you can come see us at the booth, and I'm happy to share our last year in retrospect. But seeing as we're almost all the way through 2024, and I cannot believe how fast this year has gone, particularly in terms of the landscape, I thought it'd be good to just kind of talk a little bit about what we've been seeing in the space. And I told Matt to interject too if I start to talk too fast or kind of gloss over a point. So I encourage you to do that. But first and foremost, I've been writing these reports with teams like GTI for over 10 years. And this is probably the first time that we've actually seen a major shift in the threat landscape. So this first bullet point of the exploitation of vulnerabilities, this past year and 2023, we saw a mass increase in the amount of vulnerabilities that were being exploited, not just by the espionage-based threat actors, but also the criminally motivated threat actors. So I think the most salient example was what we had last year in mid-2023 with the Move It vulnerability being picked up by a pretty dominant ransomware actor. And that wasn't the first vulnerability that they picked up and used against a bunch of different organizations. Number two, this isn't very surprising, but it continues to be a theme and a more complex one as the landscape continues to change. Geopolitics are a huge driver in what we're seeing in the world of the threat landscape. We've got a lot of different conflicts around the world. There's cyber capabilities involved with a lot of that. That continues to make things very interesting in terms of what we're seeing in this space. This is, again, a topic that I think has been top of mind recently, as well as in general, but supply chain compromises. Again, this is something that we're seeing a lot more of. Like threat actors are taking advantage of our suppliers, maybe not going after us as targets directly. And this is something that as a team, we've been seeing a lot of. And then AI, right? So everyone's talking about AI. How can it optimize our business practices? The threat actors are looking at it too, and it's everything from we expect them to be using it for more eloquent phishing emails. There's really hard for us to tell whether they're actually doing that or not, but before AI was more broadly available, we would definitely see a lot more misspellings, grammatical errors in some of our phishing messages. And then there's a little bit more that we've been seeing just in the use of AI images in social engineering campaigns. So we expect to see more of that. It hasn't actually been the revolution that people might be concerned about, but we have seen an evolution in tactics from threat actors in the use of this. And this is something that my team continues to monitor. And then little played out, but it's not going anywhere, ransomware and crime. So even with all of the law enforcement activity that's taken place, it is such a lucrative business. This continues to be a theme.
And to interject, for threats that you've laid out, like, team obviously does the research, reporting, working with clients. Like, are any of these, I know with numbers 1 through 5 here, but are clients, I hate to say interested, but any of these topics resonate more with clients? Like, are they coming to you interested in one threat over the other? Or is it more, the broad landscape? Like, do you bring this in, they're like, I don't care about the other 4, tell me about ransomware?
So ransomware is always top of mind for everyone, particularly boards with having more responsibility in terms of the security of the organizations that they serve. But vulnerabilities, with it being such an uptick in 2023 and through 2024, we are having more conversations with our organizations about, like, how do we secure all of the things that we use in our environment, because networks aren't as clear as they used to be. So vulnerabilities can be anywhere. Yeah, it's a great question. I kind of stole my thunder
sorry.
bit on
I
this.
swear I didn't mean to tee that up.
We don't have to talk about this too much. But again, there have been a lot of vulnerabilities that have been exploited over the last 18 months. We don't expect this to change. Conversely, the way we can think about this, or the way that my team has internally discussed this, is maybe we've gotten a little bit better in terms of social engineering training as an industry, and the threat actors are being forced to iterate how they're getting into organizations. Again, don't expect this to change. Hopefully not too much, but it seems that threat actors are really focusing a lot on exploiting vulnerabilities. Again, not just the espionage motivated ones, but the criminally focused ones as well. We can't really have a conversation about the landscape without talking about what we're seeing in the ransomware space. It's actually been a little wild this year. Obviously, ransomware is top of mind for a lot of organizations. My team does track what ransomware looks like across the landscape. We monitor victim sites. We do a lot of incident response in this space. Last month, I had a much different story to tell you, where we saw a little bit of dip compared to the prior year in terms of victimology. But what we've actually seen is ransomware operators are recovering from a lot of this law enforcement activity that's taken place. So, and we thought that was going to happen, right? So law enforcement activity has been pretty aggressive towards some of the major ransomware operators, causing them to have to rebuild their operations. And what we're seeing now this past August is that actually operations have ramped back up to levels that we saw last year. I will say, year over year, we continue to see more victims in the ransomware space. So again, lucrative business. Everything is as a service now. You don't have to have a lot of capability to be a ransomware operator. You just have to get vetted in the right forums, and then you can rent out the infrastructure and have a field day with whatever flavor of the week ransomware folks are using. What do we expect to see in the coming years? This is one of my favorite questions. And if I had a really eloquent, really specific answer for you, I wouldn't be up here talking about this, and I don't think we would all be here today. But I think first and foremost, ransomware pays. Money is a big driver on how a lot of these threat actors work, and we can expect to see more of that and it escalate. One of the things that we have seen in this whole as a service space, I think most people are probably comfortable with ransomware as a service being a thing.
Mhm.
We're now seeing access as a service or credentials as a service. So it's been such a successful business model for criminal threat actors to rent out ransomware as a service, that we're seeing other parts of the landscape adopting this because it is such a lucrative business. going to continue to be a problem. That's the TLDR on that. Geopolitical tensions. I don't really think we need to get into this, but what we are seeing is that the landscape is getting very complicated in terms of geopolitics and the ability to leverage technology to help support these strategic objectives. This is not going to change. It's just going to get more complex as the landscape gets more complex. Everybody has technology that they're using within their organizations, governments, whatever it may be, and we can't expect this to change. It's, again, only going to get more complex as the landscape changes. The other thing I will say is we are in an election year, not just in the US, but around the world, and this is driving a lot of cyber activity as well. I stole my thunder again, but lowering the barrier of entry. So this is this access as a service model that we're seeing a lot of threat actors take, not just with ransomware, but all of these other as a service options. It's just lowering the barrier to entry for people or for criminals with no skill set to get in the space to make some money. And then beyond that, vulnerabilities. I don't want to take all the time, so you can talk about what we're doing to help our clients with the vulnerability space. But again, we are going to continue to see that. It's where the space is moving. We're seeing a little bit less on the phishing end of things. We're seeing a lot more on the use of vulnerabilities, which really presents an interesting problem for us with our clients in terms of transforming their operations. And then finally, credentials are king. This is, again, kind of an old story when we're talking about the landscape, but it is such a great way to maneuver through an environment if you're an adversarial actor. And we can't imagine or don't think that that's really going to change in the next couple of years.
So maybe quickly before we go off this slide and into my section, for those that aren't as close to TI and how it works, I think part of the interesting thing I learned working with you as we prepared for this was the collaboration. Can you give a 30-second to a minute, just quick overview of the collaboration of you, Mandiant, others, how you guys work together? I think people see these firms and sponsors, but the reality is this area is actually pretty tight knit. Sharing information.
It's a really, really small community. So, we were really excited to be included as a part of this conversation because we do work more broadly within the community when things happen. Also, TI as a pillar or what's the term I'm looking for? TI isn't really done well if it's just all closed door. It really is. I hate to say this because it's thrown around all the time, but it is a team sport. If I was just doing research on the threat landscape and not talking to my incident response teams or talking to my ops teams or talking to our clients to understand what they're really dealing with, there's absolutely no point in my team doing what we do. So we do seek a lot of input. It should be a collaborative thing. You should talk to your partners, your competitors. We do. I hate to say it, we do, because we all have different views or different telemetry on what's happening in the space. And ultimately, it does help us defend networks better.
Awesome.
All right, your turn. What are we doing about it, Matt?
I don't know. All right. So security operations today, I'll leave this up here for just a brief moment. I think a lot of people have been seeing, just the movement over the last few years from, I won't say older technologies, but as the pace of attacks, threats, technology increases in scales, organizations like Google, Mandiant, and others have brought different and unique solutions to bear. Part of what we do at PwC is try to connect that message. We do a lot of work, again, to my tax audit joke earlier, a lot of connections at the broad levels of the C-suite. We can bring a lot of messaging that sometimes gets lost, in the fray, and can really help address sort of the challenges that executives and others see. And I know people don't like to say, oh, technology is the solution, but in this case, it is. A lot of the issues that we see when we undergo some of these engagements, transformations, et cetera, with clients are typical roadblocks that you guys have seen. Old ways of thinking, not enough people, not enough operational, maturity to take into an account the technology you're deploying. A massive amount of alerts when you start to get more, I won't say high fidelity, but broader visibility across your environment. So typical pieces. I think one at the bottom, I'd say log retention and integration complexity. Just none of this is new to anybody here, but it's the same old. It's just, same story, new day, and new technology solutions coming. So we had it up here just in case this is new to anybody else. But nothing mind-blowing there. I think part of what we've tried to do with Google and Mandiant is take the platform that they've developed and help to address those historical challenges. As we've got up here listed, alert fatigue, limited visibility, talent shortage, manual processes, all of this, becomes more of like, how do you have higher fidelity information? How do you understand what's coming through at a better angle? How do you manage the broader deployment of tooling? I think a lot of the clients that we work with around SecOps transformations with, I still call it Chronicle. I know it's rebranded. Chronicle are the massive amount of data that they're pulling in now. The fact that they had to limit what they looked at previously, and now with this technology have unlocked the ability to monitor their entire environment, which has a cascading effect of difficulties. Great. I've got more alerts. I've got more issues. Well, what do you do with that? Well, part of what Google has brought to bear that we help clients work with is, hey, there's an entire orchestration engine. How do we automate away some of that? How do we get, your critical individuals that are running, level one analysis out of ticket mode and having them do more, I don't say value add, but more impactful pieces of work. And I think a lot of our work around this area is simply, adapting the organizations to the technology that they're bringing to bear. I think, in our lovely one where I still call it Chronicle on this one, I think we've spent a lot of time working with Google over the last 18, 24 months, working with product teams, working with Mandiant intelligence, Mandiant defense, because I think clients want this. They're interested. Those of you who are out there that have looked at it, they're extremely, CISOs are always looking for a way to make, their organizations more secure, but their staff's lives easier, and I think a lot of that comes to the overused buzzword of, automation and AI. But in this case, as I joke with some of the Googlers we work with, people have been promising this, for a decade. It's here now, in this technology stack. And I think a lot of what we help clients with is, I don't say unlocking it, but navigating through how that changes their operations. Like from a live example for a group that we're working with now, it totally changes the detection engineering team's approach to how they will run their environment. They have more data and they need a better way to manage and engineer it. And part of that is getting them on board with understanding how to think differently. And so I think a lot of the work we end up doing around this, especially when it comes into, to tie it back to what you brought before, like tying in the threat intelligence component, and getting more high fidelity, say telemetry, so to speak, is working with the people and the processes. I hate saying it, but it is. Like the technology's there, but a lot of what we deal with is simply bringing the organizations along. They're big commitments, they're large transformations. The technology has been great and is continuing to get better. And I think the ceiling, there's always a limit, but I think we haven't hit a point yet where we're like, oh, we can't do that for you. So, I guess any last comments, Allison, on because I think your TI is SecOps is SecOps. We can help, love it, does protect. TI is, interesting. People really love it. Like, how do you see and how do clients sort of pull your data in from an operational standpoint? Because I think, and maybe, this is for those out there, I talk to a lot of organizations that say, yeah, we have 30 threat intelligence feeds. Cool. What are you doing with it? Is it going anywhere? Like, do you have conversations like that with organizations?
All the time.
What do they do?
All the time, right?
What do you tell them when they say that?
These TI stories can be super fun and very exciting, but really one of the things that my team does is help contextualize that and prioritize these types of threats for organizations. So you can't tackle everything all at once. Threat intelligence team monitors all the things all the time. It's really about what are the threats that I might realize and how do I transform my organization to defend against those threats.
Well, I think we got a minute left. Super loud.
It is super
We're
loud.
not trying to do questions up here. We are up in the front booth if you want to stop by and talk more. We have a lot of our practitioners here today. So a lot of individuals, while Alice and I probably help sort of direct and, I hate saying manage the teams, but it's a lot of what we do. We have a lot of the engineers here that are actually working in these areas at our booth. If you're interested in learning more around success and struggles that we've had, we're more than happy to talk with you. I think we've had a great time here. We appreciate you guys taking the 20 minutes to sit with us, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.